You did that. And so when I see people talking, and I'm like, oh my God, can somebody? I mean, I know I got a show, and I know I got my podcast, but I'm like, God damn, y'all, I'm fair.
The NBA is in jeopardy because their ratings have declined. So as you see from the infographic here, the NBA ratings are down 28% on ESPN. And this infographic came out about the end of last year, December 2024. The NBA signed a new $76 billion deal. It's a lot of money in this sport and play stuff. But as you can see on the graphic, their first month rating, so the NBA starts, I think, in early November, and their ratings are down 7%, which is 1.9 million viewers. And overall, for the last 13 years, since 2012, I guess at that point, 12 years, because it came out in December 2024, you have a 48% decline in ratings, which is the NBA has pretty much just over the last decade or so has lost nearly half of its audience. Again, this kind of coincides with social media. We had Facebook and MySpace at that time, but the expansion of social media as an entity and a mode of entertainment just beyond the entertainment that it provides today. So we can see that the NBA is attempting to get into this WWE style mode where all of these items are being taken off of the field and the court, whatever sport it may be, in order to keep the people engaged in some kind of way by having this type of entertainment via whether it be podcasts and other modes of entertainment via social media to keep the eyeballs as much as they possibly can. So we also wanted to, in addition to the entertainment and the peripheral items outside of the actual sport itself, in order to keep the people engaged, we see this big gambling effort. And a lot of these podcasts are sponsored by big gambling houses and websites, again, which is a detriment to Black people globally. And this is a channel designed for Black people. So if we do get any people from outside, Black people, just so you know, this is why we focus on this overall. Gambling being a big detriment. And one day at some point, I'll be able to bring that in a little more context for everyone. But one person that in particular that's really good on and sharp on this topic is Antonio Moore. Shout out to the ADOS movement. Him and Yvette do some outstanding work from a political standpoint and putting things in perspective for Black people in the modern days and time. So salute to the brother, a big fan of his and his work in discussing Black people from an economic standpoint and sociological standpoint. But here again, he brings in in his video, one of his latest videos, LeBron James and Stephen A. Smith gossip doesn't matter, all while Trump is gutting America's resources. So let's take a listen in on what Brother Antonio Moore had to say about this topic.
Discussion that everybody know about is this weird confrontation between gambling spokespeople. LeBron do DraftKings, Stephen A. do ESPN bets, and they sell it to low pro-Black people and pro-white people. And Trump pointing at you. I got a full queue, 310-388-3499 to hear from you. Here's Stephen A. Smith last month complaining about people close to LeBron, texting him about the issue he has with him. So you don't like when he uses back channels or confronts you. This is what this man is talking about. This grown man is on here babbling about this a few days ago. Stephen A. Smith calls out LeBron James' camp for seemingly trying to silence his critics. What are we talking about?
So this is Tone, and Tone doesn't really cut cars, brother from Southern California. He doesn't tiptoe through the tulips on this topic. Black people are in a real struggle to reach adulthood collectively, particularly certain generations. Such as Gen X and older millennials have not reached the point of political maturity, and we're still talking about things that are very much irrelevant to our cause.
In the middle of this, they talking about that as grown adults that don't have enough.
Exactly. You know, we see, I did the story on Black Lives Matter Plaza being demolished, which is more symbolic than anything. I see most people really don't care, and I can't really say that I do as well. But the symbol and actually what it represents, especially particularly coming from the Trump administration, and what we'll see, and we also see the story coming out of Lincoln Heights, Ohio. It looks like people are becoming emboldened and black people are being erased all around the world, to include a lot of the benefits that black people pretty much received previously are starting to be gutted, starting with the federal workforce.
I want to talk today. I want to keep the discussion going. I want you to understand you're going to have to get to a point where you question who you are. I already gave you ADOS, which re-anchored that you're not African in the continent. You are American descendant of slavery, and you must find yourself inside of that. I already told you about being boomerhood and the fact that you don't buy your mama a house. She pays off your school. How many things can we get down? I got to tell you that you don't sports gamble?
So Tone uses a great phrase here, boomer hook. And I believe he is the creator of the term boomer hook, which is a very serious term with black people. And as many black people know, that the boomers, believe they were born between 1945 and 1965. Don't get me wrong, but I know it's sometime after World War II, going up to 1965. That's pretty much the generation that were able to purchase houses at a very low cost. In some cases, merely in the five figures back in the 70s and possibly early 80s. And those houses are worth well into the six figures in most cases. And with those people being able to get the civil service jobs and federal jobs en masse, the first generation to be able to do so, they have the pensions, they have the house value in ways that Gen X, which was born between 1965 and 1980, and the millennials who were born between let me see. I want to say 1980 and 1995. If I'm wrong, please drop that in the comments. But again, the boomers were the generation that got the benefits, right? So you had the civil rights movement and America in an attempt to comply with the mandates of all of the subsequent acts, both locally and on a federal level. They reaped a lot of the benefits, and today they have the wealth as a result of it. But at some point, that was cut off for black people. So there was a limitation kind of to get out of the black nationalist civil rights movement. So they pretty much gave black people everything they wanted at that time, mostly in the way of affordable housing and jobs. And we see that in our families, for the most part throughout America, the people that have the most amount of money are these baby boomers because of the wealth and the benefits. You're talking about people that were able to get high paying jobs with just high school diplomas. For Generation X and millennials, that was not even a possibility. In many cases, I know millennials who have two master's degrees and working entry-level positions. So we see that in our families that the baby boomers are the generation that have most of the money. So the term boomer hook is that most people have to rely on that baby boomer or the collective of baby boomers in the family for financial relief. So you essentially become hooked to the people in your family from that generation. And there are stats, and I think Antonio called it out, that when that generation passes away, the baby boomers, though that are pretty much black wealth is over. It goes below zero at that point because Gen X and the millennials don't have that wealth, and Gen Z is just starting to enter the workforce.
And then you fight me on that? And I gotta tell you that the people that sell it to you ain't about nothing. We live in America where the late car payments have risen to the highest level in over 30 years. High car prices and elevated interest rates have strained auto loan borrowers. But you talking about how Gilbert Arenas brought Stephen A on the show from the underdog sports betting. So we got DraftKings with LeBron, we got ESPN bets with Stephen A, and we got Gilbert Arenas with underdog. And you don't know why these people are everywhere all the time?
So again, he's pretty much calling out, and I think he'll say it in this clip at some point, that these sports betting agencies are sponsoring nearly all of these black podcasts that are generating hundreds of millions, if not billions of views, and they're sponsoring. So these podcasts, pretty much their financial model is not you being the one to consume and them getting paid from social media platforms. You are your eyeballs are being paid for to look at these podcasts because they are sponsored by these gambling houses. The gambling houses want you to be gamblers, so they have to have a vehicle or a resource to get you to outside of the traditional marketing and advertising. So they say, hey, you have a podcast, you can get Cat Williams on your podcast. If you can get hundreds of millions of views, that's marketing, advertising gold. So here's some money. And if you can ensure that your ratings will stay high and your views will stay high, we will continue to sponsor you. So in many of these cases, a lot of these people are just advertising pretty much for the gambling agencies, and the entertainment is second.
Told you, in my belief, Shannon Sharp interview with Cat Williams was only popular because they had DraftKings in the corner and something was done with the algorithm. It's just not an important enough story, an old nostalgic black story. How many times do we got to hear about what happened on the Friday set? Or what happened when Cat Williams seen Corey Holcomb or any comedian in 1999 walking?
Antonio is right. Why was the Cat Williams interview so compelling? And on a personal note, to me, as a people, and I know a lot of black people on here say, well, I don't care what you think. You ain't nobody. You don't care. I don't care what your thoughts are. It looks bad. It really looks bad to the outside world. Like, how can we be taken seriously as a people? And again, our people, we like to talk slick, but when it gets real, we see the effects of our actions on a lot of these things. And this is not to down talk our people for the most part, but we definitely have to scrutinize and use critical thinking as it relates to some of the things that we consume.
Bunch of underdog sports betting promotion. This whole Hunger Games nonsense is crazy. You got grown men having a high school dispute in a very serious moment where people might starve. Both these grown men worth hundreds of millions of dollars off of selling you this.
So again, we're about 6 weeks into the Trump presidency, 5 weeks into the Trump presidency, that has been moving with hurricane gale force winds, and somehow, with the panic that Trump is doing this, that, and the third, we still find ourselves in the midst of consuming entertainment. And again, Tone is pointing out that isn't it ironic that this clip goes viral where LeBron confronts Stephen A. Smith, but at the same time, they are big pitchmen for these gambling houses.
All these people are just out here. They out here setting up a destruction bottle that many of you will not realize you're in until your teeth rot from this gambling. I'm saying it to you first, and I'm saying it to you last. What will happen is that, particularly with the sports gambling, it will cause a crack-like scourge on poor America, but particularly Black America. And then all of these people will play like they're confused, from Joe Budden to Shannon Sharp to Gilbert Arenas to LeBron James to Stephen A. Smith to Charles Barkley. They're going to all act like they didn't know it could get that bad.
So we're in a gangster rap type situation, right? So in the early 90s and the 2000s, where record companies were looking for particular acts to emulate gangster rap, and a lot of people kind of sacrificed their abilities in whatever type of rap they were doing to kind of do this gangster rap because it paid more. Here we have a similar situation to the gangster rap artists, where now the celebrity athletes are pitching us another thing. It's not gangster rap this time, it's gambling. And so this is another vice that has been added to the community. And look at the graphic on the screen where he's saying late car payments have risen to the highest level in over 30 years. So 30 years ago would be 1995, right? And that is kind of looking like, we don't know where we stand as a people in the United States of America. And as long as we continue to ignore these realities, and the old adage is, when the white man has a cold, Black people have pneumonia. Because whatever impacts America in a negative light, it negatively impacts Black people in America tenfold. So, okay, this is a general stat, a generic stat, but when you hear these general stats as it relates to America overall, you can only imagine what this means for Black people.
When everything told them it could. Why would they give this man $100 million? Okay, well, you do the math. I want to talk today, before I come to the next caller. This article came out back in May of 2024. I've been talking about the sports gambling since the Supreme Court decision back in, I believe, 2016, 2017. But what you're seeing is that no one understands. I don't know how you don't. There's a reason it was banned before. You understand that the ban actually happened under Bush, under a Republican. You understand that in Texas, they won't allow them out of that casino, them Adelsons with Mark Cuban, because the Republicans are saying no along with the Democrats.
So there you have it, brothers and sisters. I want to read the adage from Roman times 2,000 years ago. People just playing us generation after generation, century after century, millennium after millennium, using old tactics with a new face, with a new skin, with a new coating, with a new covering. But it's the same old thing people have been playing for 2,000 years. And if you don't know your history, you're destined to repeat it. And that only helps people that are in power, who actually have generational wealth, is to actually keep you down. So let's read this from Marcus Cicero again from Roman times. The evil was not in bread and circuses per se. So the evil of bread and circuses, it's in itself is not bad, but in the willingness of the people to sell their rights as free men.
Listen,
right? So bread and circus in itself is not a bad thing. It's the willingness of the people to sell their rights as free men. And free men encompasses free women too, right? So if bread and circus is not effective unless free men are willing to participate in it. Here you are, you're giving away your freedom, thinking that it's freedom. Think about that. You're giving away your freedom, thinking you have the freedom to do so, which is an idea that has been sold to you from birth. The freedom, I can look what I want to. I can do what I want to. And the reality is, if you know the history, you can't do what you want to without consequences. Albeit I'm not here to say stop watching sports, right? We have, and this is, if it's personal, this is nothing personal against anyone in particular. We're looking at it from a group scale, from a bird's eye view, the scope of the entirety of the people. So if you don't feel personally that this has subsumed you, has consumed you as an individual, and it doesn't impact your life, it doesn't impact you economically to sit down and watch the football game, that's fine. You're probably right when it comes to that. We're talking about this thing as a group of people. And to deny that would be insane. We must look at this thing. Antonio brought up the actual example of the person that was talking about. Grown man talking about what LeBron and Stephen A. Smith are doing. Guys that are 100 million, right? These are guys that are in the 9-figure scope, right? And Stephen A. making 9 figures, I'm not really sure. He probably has to go all out now to earn, to justify that 100 million. So it's the willingness of the people to sell their rights as free men. So remember the Bible and the story of Jacob and Esau. Esau is the son, Jacob and Esau were the sons of Isaac through Abraham, right? And we see that God made a promise to Abraham, fulfilled through Isaac, according to the Bible. According to the Bible, so my people don't get on me talking about Ishmael and Isaac. I'm just talking about the story as it reads in the Bible. Jacob and Esau inherits the birthright that God, based on the promise of God made to Abraham through Isaac, unto Esau, right? And then there was a day that Esau was hungry, and he sold his birthright to his brother Jacob for a bowl of soup. So in this case, and this is 2,000 years ago, I believe that the Abrahamic Isaac through Esau and Jacob was 6,000 years ago. But don't quote me on that. But saying all that to say is there is a common thread when men choose idleness over diligence and industriousness. Right? And powerful people in charge, always know how to distract the masses, to be able to let you do things by, let the last poet say, automatic, systematic, remote control, synthetic, genetic, demand your soul. Right? So it's not telling you to sell your rights, but it's giving you the mindset that you're going to voluntarily sell your rights as free men. And let's go on with the statement. The evil was not in bread and circuses per se, but in the willingness of the people to sell their rights as freemen for full bellies and the excitement of the games. So this whole thing is based on the Jacob and Esau story. It's like, I am hungry now, right? Therefore, I am going to sell my birthright to you for a bowl of soup. Now, you talk about value of a bowl of soup versus a birthright, right? Let's just put back of the envelope numbers on there, right? A bowl of soup would be 5 shekels, whatever the currency they were using those half a dozen millennium ago, versus a birthright, which you can't even quantify the number. It's so high, you can't even put the number to it. For full bellies and the excitement of the games. How many times you say, I'm bored? Right? You just sit hours and hours watching the game. You know, the bills are piling up in the background. Right? And the excitement of games, right? So, again, this doesn't necessarily mean the games also, right? Because they had games, you know, in the Coliseum and things of that nature. And there's the famous meme that goes around the internet where the ancient stadiums are exact replicas of the modern stadiums, particularly football stadiums. But games can be applicable to anything that leads to idleness that is not part of improving or progression of the future. So let's read it again. The evil was not in bread and circuses per se, but in the willingness of the people to sell their rights as free men for full bellies and the excitement of the games, which would serve to distract them from the other human hungers. The other human hungers would be enlightenment, right? Study, industriousness, work, diligence, which would serve to distract them from the other human hungers of the soul, hungers of the mind. Food for the belly is not food for the mind. Those things can only be served by work and enlightenment. Study, studiousness, industriousness, diligence, which bread and circuses can never, in no scenario, at no point of time, ever appease, which would serve to distract them from the other human hungers. Again, that's of the soul, with bread and circuses, which bread and circuses can never appease. So with all that said, family, just pay attention, be aware, be mindful of the things that you consume. Like Flavor Flav said, don't believe the hype. This is all hype, smoke and mirrors, magician work, and enchantment. Things that are casting a spell over us as a people. Again, this is not personal. I'm not telling anyone to stop watching sports, although I don't watch it. But as a people, we must get our priorities in line for us to move forward as a people and not continue to pick up the vices of a society that already has already established, and already has the wealth. And we're trying to compete and put our children out there to compete with people who have the wealth, right? How can we send our children out there to compete with people who have the wealth? Right? They have to compete with the children of people who had wealth, who had all the resources growing up. Right? So, with that said, peace and blessings, family. I'm going to leave it there again. I'm your brother, Afrodescendant Ali of the Angel Network 1930. Please support the Cash App. You see at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And we will be back with more of this information. Peace.
Oh my God,